The story begins with Bookchin, a great general, and Xianwei, who brought stability to a tumultuous political landscape through martial prowess. Meanwhile, in the palace, Yurim was enthroned as the emperor, and as a token of appreciation for their loyalty and shared struggles, he appointed 6 loyal retainers as kings to assist him in ruling the empire. Crown. This marked the beginning of a new era, with Yurim at the helm and his trusted allies by his side. The appointment of the 6 kings was a strategic move aimed at consolidating power and ensuring the stability of the empire. As the story unfolds, the dynamics between Yurim and his kings, as well as the challenges they face, will likely shape the fate of the empire. The scene unfolded on a ravaged battlefield, the ground littered with the remnants of war. Amidst the desolation, a lone figure lay motionless at the epicenter of the chaos. As the dust settled, the figure was revealed to be none other than great General Xianwei. His body was a canvas of brutal injuries, wounds covering every inch of his battered form. With a groan, General Yun leaned up, his eyes widening in shock as he beheld the 6 kings standing above him, their faces unreadable. The general's gaze burned with anger and betrayal as he locked eyes with the kings. "You bastards betrayed me," he spat, his voice laced with venom and pain. The air was heavy with tension as the 6 kings stood silent, their piercing gazes fixed intently on the fallen general. The king's impassive demeanor seemed to infuriate General Yun further. "Have you forgotten me, Sword King?" he bellowed, his voice raw with emotion. "I am Xianwei." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea all at once. The general's battered body seemed to swell with pride and defiance as he declared his identity, as if daring the king to forget the legend that was Xianwei. The Sword King's gaze never wavered, but his voice was laced with an unsettling calmness as he replied, "We have not forgotten, Xianwei, but your time has passed." As General Yun attempted to rise, his gaze fell upon his leg, and his eyes widened in horror. One of his legs was mangled beyond recognition, the damage so severe that it seemed impossible for it to still be attached to his body. He stared at the wreckage in complete disbelief, his mind struggling to comprehend the extent of the destruction. The general's face contorted in a mix of shock, pain, and despair as he whispered, No, this can't be." The reality of his situation crashed down on him like a tidal wave, and for a moment, all he could do was stare at the ruin of his leg in stunned silence. The Sword King's voice dripped with mockery as he taunted General Yun. "What can you do in that state?" he sneered, his tone laced with contempt. "This is the end, great general." A surge of energy burst forth from General Yun's battered form, radiating an aura of power that seemed almost impossible given his condition. The 6 kings took a collective step back, their eyes widening in surprise and caution. The Sword King's mocking expression faltered, replaced by a look of wariness. "Nothing will change, even if you can do this," he declared, his voice firm but laced with a hint of uncertainty. The king's retreat was a testament to the general's enduring strength, but their words were a reminder that his circumstances remained dire. General Yun's response was a fierce, defiant smile, as if he had tapped into a deep well of power that refused to be extinguished. The 6 kings exchanged skeptical glances, their whispers barely audible as they murmured to themselves, "No way! Such power with that body?" Their eyes darted to General Yun's mangled form, incredulous that he could harness such energy despite his severe injuries. The disparity between his battered physical state and the potent power emanating from him seemed almost impossible, leaving the kings questioning what they were witnessing. Their doubts hung in the air, a mixture of confusion and apprehension, as they struggled to comprehend the true extent of General Yun's abilities. With a fierce cry, General Yun declared, "I won't leave you traitors and go like this. I will face you with the determination to die together. I will show you the Avatar descent dance of Xianwei, the final dance of the Avatar." His voice echoed across the battlefield, a challenge and a warning to the 6 kings. As he spoke, his body began to glow with an intense, otherworldly energy, and the air around him seemed to distort and ripple. The 6 kings took a step back, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe, as they realized that General Yun was about to unleash a technique that would either destroy them or consume him entirely. The 6 kings exchanged worried glances, their thoughts unspoken but clear. "Can we really kill the great general?" The Sword King's eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing as he assessed General Yoon's battered form. "Search. A martial art from that body," he murmured, his tone laced with doubt. The king's uncertainty grew, their confidence wavering in the face of General Yoon's unyielding determination. Despite his injuries, the general's spirit remained unbroken, and his resolve to unleash the Avatar Descent dance seemed to imbue him with an aura of invincibility. The Sword King's thoughts turned inward, his gaze piercing as he assessed General Yoon's battered form. To intimidate masters of the transcendent with that body, indeed, great general, worthy of being called a god of war, he thought to himself. A mix of emotions swirled within the Sword King, surprise, respect, and a hint of trepidation. Despite General Yoon's injuries, his aura remained imposing, and the Sword King couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for the general's unyielding spirit. General Yoon's eyes blazed with a fierce determination as he thought to himself, "Stop with the useless thoughts and focus. Wait, at least take one of them with me to the afterlife." With a battle cry, he shouted, Come on, I'll take you alone." His voice echoed through the air, a challenge to the Six Kings. Despite his battered body, his spirit remained unbroken, and his determination to take down at least one of his opponents with him seemed to grant him a surge of adrenaline. The general's roar was a testament to his unyielding resolve. General Yoon's thoughts drifted, and he thought of someone, his expression tinged with a mix of longing and regret. "If you were here at a time like this, it would have been a great help. Where are you? His voice trailed off, the unspoken name hanging in the air like a whispered prayer. For a moment, the general's gaze seemed to wander, his focus wavering as memories or emotions threatened to overwhelm him. But as a sword suddenly pierced through General Yoon's chest, the blade slicing through his armor and into his vital organs. He coughed violently, vomiting a pool of blood as his body arched in agony. The sword's wielder stood frozen, the blade still lodged in the general's chest, as if unsure of what to do next. General Yoon's eyes widened in shock and pain, but his gaze never wavered, his determination and fury burning brighter with every passing moment. Despite the mortal wound, the general's body seemed to defy the inevitability of death, as if driven by sheer willpower to keep fighting. Blood poured from his mouth, staining his lips and chin, and his breathing grew ragged, but his spirit remained unbroken. As the sword pierced his chest, General Yoon's eyes widened in shock and pain. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him, and the one who stabbed him uttered in surprise, "After what your body's been through, to show such might, even with your legs severed." Upon hearing the sound of the voice, General Yoon's throat constricted, and he thought to himself, "This voice? No way." His eyes seemed to glaze over, as if memories or emotions long buried were resurfacing. The general's reaction was a mix of shock, denial, and a hint of something deeper, a complexity that went beyond mere battlefield adversaries. The voice seemed to have unlocked a door in his mind, and the implications of what this could mean hung in the air, suspended like the moment before a storm breaks. The figure behind General Yoon spoke in a voice that sent shivers down the general's spine, saying, "As expected, brother, you're someone who cannot be left alive." The words dripped with a mixture of familiarity and malice, implying a complex history between the two. General Yoon's eyes seemed to cloud over, his mind racing with the implications of the voice and the words. The figure's tone was laced with a sense of inevitability. As General Yoon turned to face the speaker, his eyes widened in utter shock and disbelief. "You Rim, even you?" The words barely escaped his lips before his body gave out, and he suddenly fell down, the sword still lodged in his chest. The impact of the fall sent shock waves through his battered frame, and his vision began to blur. General Yoon's body hit the ground with a thud, his eyes fixed on Rim's face, a mix of shock, pain, and betrayal frozen in his gaze. The sound of his fall echoed through the air, a stark contrast to the silence that had preceded it, and Rim's expression remained unreadable as he stood over the general's lifeless body. Rim's voice was laced with a sense of reverence and finality as he spoke. "The ruler of this world is none other than Emperor Rim. But there was a god about the emperor, the god of war, Cheonghwa. With today, the history of the god of war ends." His words hung in the air, a declaration that marked the end of an era. The weight of his statement seemed to settle upon the surroundings, as if the very fabric of reality was acknowledging the passing of a legend. Yu Rim's gaze lingered on General Yoon's lifeless body, a mixture of emotions dancing in his eyes, before he turned away, leaving the legacy of the god of war to fade into memory. With a subtle smile, Yu Rim stood tall, his eyes gleaming with a sense of triumph and destiny fulfilled. "Now, I have finally become the true emperor," he declared, his voice filled with conviction and a hint of relief. The weight of his words seemed to resonate through the air, as if the very heavens themselves acknowledged his ascension to the throne. Seeing Yun, in great pain, you coughed up blood, your body trembling with the effort. The sound of your cough echoed through the air, a stark reminder of the mortal wounds you had suffered. Despite the agony, your eyes still burned with fierce determination, a testament to the unyielding spirit that had defined your legendary career as the god of war. As you coughed, your vision began to blur and your body weakened, but your willpower remained unbroken, a flame that refused to be extinguished. Yu Rim's voice was laced with a mix of sadness and resolve as he said, "You seem to be in pain. Let me make it easier for you." His words were tinged with a sense of finality, and his eyes betrayed a hint of sorrow, as if he was reluctant to take the life of the legendary god of war, my brother, who was also the god of war Bukshin, greatest General Cheonghwa, Yun my brother's corpse the enemy. Cheonghwa Yun's eyes blazed with anger and a deep sense of betrayal as he thought to himself, "How unfair! Not only betrayed by a comrade who I entrusted my back to. Yu Rim, you are with them? Even at this moment, I can't believe it." The weight of Yu Rim's treachery crushed him, and the pain of his wounds seemed to pale in comparison to the anguish in his heart. He couldn't fathom how his own brother could turn against him, and the sense of shock and hurt lingered, refusing to dissipate. The injustice of it all burned. Cheonghwa Yun's eyes welled up with tears as he gazed up at Yu Rim, his mind reeling with the weight of his brother's betrayal. "How could you, brother?" he seemed to whisper silently, his heart heavy with sorrow and shock. The pain of his physical wounds was eclipsed by the anguish of his brother's treachery, and for a moment, all he could think about was a deep bond they had once shared. Tears streamed down his face, a testament to the depth of his emotions, as he struggled to come to terms with the fact that as Cheonghwa Yun opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by an unfamiliar darkness, the air thick with heat. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and slowly, his surrounding began to take shape. The darkness seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the heat was oppressive, making it hard to breathe. Cheonghwa Yun's mind was foggy, and he struggled to recall how he had gotten there. The last thing he remembered was everything going blank. Now he was in this strange, dark place. "What is this place?" he thought to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. The silence was oppressive, and he strained his ears, listening for any sound that might give him a clue about where he was and what lay ahead. Cheonghwa Yun's thoughts turned to the possibility of purgatory, a realm where souls might linger after death, atoning for their sins or waiting for judgment. He pondered the idea, his mind racing with questions. Had he not been killed by his own brother? Was this some kind of limbo, a place where he would have to confront the consequences of his own actions? As Cheonghwa Yun gazed down at the water covering his hand, he suddenly saw his reflection staring back at him. But it wasn't the reflection that shocked him, it was the state of his own face. His eyes widened in horror as he took in sight of his own visage, and he felt his mind reel with shock and disbelief. The reflection showed a face that was not his own. The features were different, the eyes, the nose, the jawline. Everything was unfamiliar. Cheonghwa Yun's shock turned to confusion, and then to utter bewilderment. Who was this person staring back at him? And what had happened to his own face? The question swirled in his mind as he stared at the reflection, unable to look away. Cheonghwa Yun's mind reeled as he stared at the reflection, his thoughts racing with confusion and disbelief. What is this? No way, is this child me? The face staring back at him was that of a young boy, innocent and unaware of the world. It was a face that bore no resemblance to the strong, battle-hardened warrior he knew himself to be. The shock and bewilderment were palpable as he struggled to comprehend the truth. Was this some kind of illusion, a trick of the mind, or was he truly seeing himself in a different form? The question swirled in his head, refusing to settle, as he continued to stare at the reflection in horror and confusion. Cheonghwa Yun's senses snapped into high alert as he heard the sound of someone talking outside. His head jerked up, and he listened intently, trying to pinpoint the location and tone of the voice. Someone is outside, he thought to himself, his mind racing with possibilities. Who could it be? A friend, a foe, or perhaps someone who could help him understand the strange and unfamiliar world he found himself in. He held his breath, straining to hear more, his ears tuned to the faint sounds coming from beyond the darkness. Suddenly, the voice grew louder, and he caught snippets of conversation, but it was what was being said that made his heart skip a beat. He person's words sent a chill down Cheonghwa Yoon's spine as he pieced together the fragment of conversation. Brew chest, doing as we've been told. The word seemed to imply something sinister, and the fact that he'd seen a child's reflection in the water earlier added to his growing unease. The revelation hit Cheonghwa Yoon like a ton of bricks. The lord of the palace, his own child, uses medicine? The thought was abhorrent, and he couldn't help but wonder what kind of desperation or depravity would drive someone to such an act. The more he thought about it, the more his anger and disgust grew. How could someone so callous and heartless justify such actions? The Lord's reputation, his power, his influence, all seemed to pale in comparison to the atrocity of using his own child in such a manner. Cheonghwa Yoon's mind was filled with a mix of emotions, outrage, horror, and a deep sense of sadness. Cheonghwa Yoon's desperate attempt to climb up ended in frustration, as his hand slipped, and he fell back down with a thud. The sound echoed through the dark, damp space, and he let out a frustrated grunt. His palms were scraped and bruised, but he didn't let the pain deter him. He gritted his teeth and assessed the situation, trying to come up with a new plan. The darkness seemed to close in around him, but he refused to give up. With a determined glint in his eye, he began to feel his way around the space, searching for any possible means of escape. His fingers probed every nook and cranny, seeking a weakness in the walls or a possible handhold. Cheonghwa Yoon's mind was racing with the horrific realization that he was trapped inside the Cheonghwa, a device used for boiling people alive. The thought of being in a child's body, unable to escape, was terrifying. He looked up at the hole in the ceiling, but it seemed out of reach. The structure of the Cheonghwa was imposing, and the heat was unbearable. Panic set in as he thought about his situation. It's me, right? I am inside the Cheonghwa, he thought, trying to process the reality of the predicament. He knew he had to find a way out, but the circumstances seemed insurmountable. The person's words were cut short as the flame beneath the Cheonghwa roared to life, intensifying the heat to an unbearable level. Cheonghwa Yoon felt the scorching warmth closing around him, and his panic turned to desperation. The sound of the flames crackling and the creaking of the metal seemed to grow louder, and he knew he was running out of time. The heat was becoming almost unbearable, and he could feel it seeping into his skin. He gritted his teeth, determined to find a way out, but the circumstances seemed increasingly dire. The person's voice outside seemed to fade into the background as the sound of flames and his own ragged breathing became the only things that mattered. As the heat intensified, Cheonghwa Yoon's thoughts grew disjointed and fragmented. I can't even breathe anymore at this rate. Before I burn death, my mind. The words trailed off as his consciousness began to slip away, consumed by the overwhelming sensation of heat and pain. His vision blurred, and his eyelids grew heavy, as if weighed down by the crushing reality of his situation. The sound of the flames and the creaking of the metal seemed to recede into the distance, replaced by a dull roar that echoed through his mind. His thoughts dissolved into darkness, and his body seemed to relax, surrendering to the inevitable. As the voice called out, Cheonghwa Yoon's eyes snapped open, and he saw a figure standing before him. His gaze locked onto the person's face, and a mixture of relief and surprise washed over him. "Teacher!" he exclaimed, his voice hoarse from the heat. The figure's presence seemed like a lifeline in his desperate situation, and he felt a surge of hope. Was this person here to rescue him, or was it just a cruel trick of his own desperate mind? Cheonghwa Yoon's eyes remained fixed on the figure, his heart pounding with anticipation. The teacher's enigmatic words hung in the air. The Avatar's descent is the dream of the Avatar. The flame is where the Avatar is born, and this place made for playing is the Avatar stage. Cheonghwa Yoon's mind struggled to grasp the meaning behind the teacher's cryptic phrases. He looked around at the Cheonghwa, the flames, and the confines of his prison. "How did you get here?" he asked again, hoping for a more concrete answer. But the teacher's response seemed to hint at something deeper, something beyond the physical realm. The teacher's gaze was intense, as if willing Sian-Wei-Yun to understand the hidden truths he was revealing. The teacher's sudden shout cut through the air. "What are you doing?" "Dance." Sian-Wei-Yun was taken aback, unsure how to respond. But as the teacher's words echoed in his mind, he felt an inexplicable urge to move. He raised his hands, and his body began to sway to an unheard rhythm. The flames around him seemed to pulse in time with his movements, as if the fire itself was dancing with him. Sian-Wei-Yun's initial hesitation gave way to a strange sense of freedom, and he let his body move, surrendering to the moment. The teacher's shout had unleashed something within him, and he danced, lost in the intensity of the flames and the mystery of the moment. Avatar Descent Dance.